All right, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Lindsay City Council and direct the clerk to take roll.
Councilmember Velasquez, Councilmember Cortez.
Here.
Councilmember Watson is absent with notice. Mayor Pro Tem Salinas and Mayor Kimball.
Here, thank you. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. With that, we will invite our city clerk to come forward and offer an invocation tonight. Thank you, Mr. Harmon, for doing this.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for the chance to come together tonight for a city council meeting in the city of Lindsay. We're grateful for the blessings that have come to this city and the good work of the young men that we'll honor tonight, and for the efforts of the city council to lead and guide this community. We pray that I will be with them and direct them in their actions and give them health for the things they need to do. We pray in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Our next item is our public comment period. If there is anyone here tonight that wishes to address the council under public comment, now's the time to do that. Please come forward to the podium and state your name for the clerk. Does anyone wish to address the council tonight under public comment?
Good evening. Just want to say thank you to the council and the audience for allowing me to introduce myself. My name is Andrew Jans. I am running for Congress in Congressional District 22, which encompasses this area. I'm a lifelong resident of the Valley. I grew up in Tulare County. Tulare County is my home. Went to Redwood High School and am Fresno County prosecutor. I work in the Violent Crimes Unit and really dedicated my life to public service, to protecting my community, and just happy to be here just to say hi and introduce myself and let you know that I'm going to be running on issues that I think that are important to this council and to this community, namely water, immigration reform, jobs in the economy, healthcare reform as well. And I hope to continue having a good relationship with the members of this board. Met with Councilmember Cortez earlier today, talked about a number of issues that I think relate to federal representation of this city. And so just want to, again, thank you for this opportunity to address this council, and I hope to continue having a good relationship with this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the council?
My name is Salvador Segura. For 40 years vive aquí en Lince. Veo que aquí la ciudad de Lince necesita más more working. Se necesita más reparación. Por eso necesitamos maybe unos depósitos, maybe unos 5,000, unos 20,000 para reparar el Lince. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't catch all of that. Did you?
He just said, he's been living here for over 40 years, and he thinks that Lindsay needs, to what I understand, some major reparations, improvements, and he sees the need, to have some reserve, some financial reserve, so that we can fix what's needed in our city.
All right. Well, thank you for being here tonight. Anyone else wish to address the council? Does anyone else wish to address the council tonight? Seeing no one, we will close public comment and move to our next item, which is council reports. Councilwoman Cortez, anything to report tonight?
Yes, a couple things. I had the opportunity to attend the I don't know if I'm saying this right, but the muster event this past weekend, and I went because I saw a Facebook post and saw some things there that reminded me about the event. So I went out there. It was very interesting. I was out there for no more than 15 minutes, but the challenges that the different teams or crews participated in were pretty interesting. It was, I wish there would have been more people out there to see. So again, I don't know if it was a lack of advertisement or whatnot, but it seems like an event that could be bigger for our community and even our children to enjoy, because the events that they have out there are pretty fun. The other thing is, as mentioned by candidate Andrew Jans, I did meet with him prior to coming to the meeting. He sounds very interested in our community and some of our priorities, so it was just nice to hear from him, to know that, you know, he understands our needs, and again, hopefully we can continue to work to make things better for our residents. Our district summer school / camp started yesterday for our K-8 children, and yesterday we had close to 700 students enrolled. So that's awesome, because that's 700 students that are receiving services not only in a fun way, but they're also getting some academic instruction. So that's awesome to know that there's something productive for them to do for the next 4 weeks. Currently, the Lindsay Youth Football program is enrolling for their tackle football league that starts in August. So for anybody that's interested, that's currently going on. Let's see. It's exciting to see all that work that's being done in the future soccer fields. I drive by it every day, so it's just nice to see the progress that's going on. And then lastly, I just want to thank Danny for putting up the flags up at the Friendship Plaza in the park, because we had been without flags for a while, and I heard it was you, so I want to say thank you for doing that. And I have one more to put up. I have another flag that needs to go on there. But anyways, thank you for that, because it makes a difference to see those flags flying on the poles there. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Laura.
Nothing.
Okay, that's your report. I don't have anything to report either tonight. So with that, we'll move on to staff report. Bill?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Maria, do you have a slide for me?
I do.
Thank you. So the first Summer Nights Light event is tomorrow evening out at the park. Kids Day, going to have a DJ, a magic show, face painting. There'll be free food. I hear tell that there might be some people in this audience that are going to be helping us with that tomorrow.
Thursday?
Isn't it Thursday? I mean, tomorrow's Wednesday. so-
Thursday. Thank you for the
Okay.
correction on Thursday. Yes. So exciting stuff. They're going to have some giveaways there. So this is the first of several that we're going to be doing. And we invite our young people and young at heart people to go out and enjoy that. We have the League of California Cities conference coming up in Long Beach, September 12th through 14th. Marie will be reaching out to council members to see who's going and who's not, so that we can make reservations with a discounted amount. For city services, our water system and treatment plant operations are normal for this time of year, which is really good because we had a couple of bumps just about a month ago, and they're doing well. And along with that, they are doing a renovation of filter banks B and C out there. And I won't go through all the details there, but we're moving forward. We expect completion within the next couple of weeks, and then we'll start the backwashing and testing. And we think that we're going to improve our throughput so we can use more of the water coming down the canal that we are allocated, 2,500 acre feet. Right now we can't process nearly that much, and so this should help expand our capacity a little bit. His folks have been working on the Well 15 contact time project, where some tubing is installed to allow the chlorine more time to work on any contaminants that might be in the system, to come into compliance with what we need to do to provide water to some of the local people that are out around the Well 15 site. Our Proposition 1 project, we talked to council about sinking a test well into the park area. We're still waiting for information from the hydrologist regarding the best location for the test well, so we're not doing anything with that. Annual consumer confidence reports have been mailed out, and Watertown should be seeing these in the mail. It's printed in both English and Spanish. Well 14 and its old DBCP problem, we're up to a year now, Mike. just over a year, with it being in full compliance. So it was spooky, you know, and it was having problems, and it has dropped and it has stayed down to well within tolerance for all of this time. So we're really pleased to be able to report that. As Councilmember Cortez mentioned, they are picking up steam on the soccer park conversion. They were holding off a little bit, waiting for some of the subcontractors to get their contracts signed, and so I think they're ready to go on that. Roundabout project, we have been aggressively pursuing this. We have four of five property owners approving the offers that the city has made for the land that is necessary. We still have one that we are talking to, and we thought we'd be well into construction by now, but you know, things always take longer than you want them to. And we'll keep you apprised. In fact, as we get a little bit further into this, we'll provide a revised schedule to you so that we can communicate with the school district and all interested parties. But yeah, we're going to be going into the fall, unfortunately. It's just how it is with that. We have to have control of the site before we can really do anything. City engineer RFQ submitted and reviewed. Staff did visit the three top firms, and the expectation is the recommendation will be presented to council at the June 26th meeting. So I reviewed the packages as well, and really strong candidates out there. The energy audit RFP, as approved by council this evening, providing that you do, staff will work with the consultant to identify projects and funding opportunities. And it'll be primarily facility-oriented ways to, we've had council members come through and say, you know, we should replace the windows in City Hall. We'd love to. If we can find a funding source for that, we jokingly say the office that I have over there on the south side of City Hall, it's interesting, the morning is when it's hot, and it's when the windows are exposed to the sun. Once the sun gets behind that big photocarpentry, I'm fine, but it makes that big a difference. Building permits, 39 permits issued during the month of May for a total valuation of $641,000. Fees collected were $19,600, and I'll share this with council for those of you that like to keep track of those details. They've been repairing water leaks out there. We've seen some stuff out in Parkside that's not leaking anymore. It's been repaired and patched. And I know they've got one that they've been working ambitiously on out by Highway 65 in Hermosa, doing some valve location out there. They've changed out 5 dead meters, put 6 new water meters in, 58 utility turn offs, 58 utility turn back on. And I can go on and on, but I'll provide the details with square footage of potholes filled, sign repaired, and so forth. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Bill. Our next item is our consent calendar. On the calendar is the City Council meeting minutes for May 22nd, warrant list for June 1st, Treasurer's report for May, right-of-way acquisition for Hermosa Roundabout, and water treatment plant filter bank recoding project. Council can take this with one motion or request something pulled for further discussion.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Our next item is what most of our audience is here for tonight. We want to recognize our Valley title winners, the Cardinal baseball team. We have a proclamation for you. Prior to that, I would like to invite Coach Kindick to come forward if he wishes to say a few words.
Hi, thanks for having us here tonight. It's always an honor and a privilege to speak on behalf of these young men. I don't know if you want to know a little bit about our season or if you just...
Whatever you want.
Yeah, well...
Good year, so.
Yeah, it was a great year. It's been in the making for a few years now. We had an opportunity the last 2 years to do this same thing, and we just kind of found a way not to make it happen. We lost games and extra innings in the semifinals the last couple of years. So these guys came back really hungry this year, and they were on a mission. And you can say all those things all you want, that, you know, we're all in just for this, and it's very hard, though, to end your season on a winning note. It's only a few teams. Well, in the whole central section, there were only 6 teams that finished their season on a win. So being able to come through this season and do what we wanted to do and actually finish with a win is a great feeling. I've been fortunate to be involved with 3 Valley titles earlier in the 90s, and I wanted this game so much for these young men because so many of them, they know the past. They understand the past. We try to teach them
not to live in the past, but to live up to it. And they sure did that this year. We don't have all our guys here. We carry 20 players this year, which is a huge baseball team. And we had about 18 on the JV team also. So that right now is a good thing. We ended up bringing up 2 JV players to the varsity to end up at 21 total players, and a couple of freshmen, and everybody else are junior and seniors. We had an unbelievable senior class with 14 guys this year, which when you're a coach, that's not always necessarily a positive going into the season, because you can only play 9 guys at a time and 14 seniors. The beauty of these young men, and you can see those smiles are genuine. There's no fake up there. They love being part of this team. They're great teammates to each other. They all figured out what their role on the team was, and they accepted it, and just everything just kind of came together, and we finished up with a 7-6 win over Bishop. Believe it or not, we played a team up by Mammoth in the Valley Finals now, so the actual Valley is really spread out. So we're very honored to be here. These young men represent our high school, and they represent our community, and I know you're proud of them like we are, but you have every right to be proud of these young men, because they're quality people. I literally had 0 discipline issues with these guys. They're great students. Almost every one of our seniors will be moving on, doing great things. They're going to be great citizens in the future. They're going to be great dads, and they're going to be great husbands. So really proud of these guys.
That's so great to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We know you've been with Lindsay High School for a while.
30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
And your loyalty and your work is appreciated.
I appreciate that.
With that, I'll go ahead and we can turn the lights back on, and I will read the proclamation. Whereas the 2018 Lindsay High School Cardinal baseball team was comprised of 21 players, including 14 seniors, 5 juniors, and 2 freshmen. Much of the team's strength comes from the friendships and family ties these young men have with each other. Many have played baseball together on recreational teams and travel teams for years. Most have been friends since elementary school. The close bonds among the players were evident throughout the season. And whereas the Cardinals overcame challenges during the season, they played the first 15 games of the season without their ace pitcher, David Jimenez, a returning senior. David broke his hand a week before the season. Despite not being able to play, David provided moral support while the other seniors and starting junior pitchers stepped up to carry the team. And whereas after a frustrating 0-5 start to the season, the Cardinals won some games and lost some games before winning the last 9 games of the regular season to finish second in league for the second year in a row. And whereas the Cardinals finished the season winning 4 playoff games on their way to a 7-6 victory for the Valley title, this is the first Valley title the Cardinals have won since 1992, 26 years ago. And whereas the Cardinals' perseverance in the face of difficulties and drive to support each other in challenges demonstrates the qualities that made the team successful. Now therefore be it proclaimed, the City of Lindsay, Mayor and City Council do hereby recognize the 2018 Lindsay High School Cardinal baseball team for hard work, team unity, and achievement in winning the Valley title. Further, we express our appreciation for the positive examples you have been to other youth in Lindsay. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and affixed the seal of the City of Lindsay, California, this 12th day of June, 2018. Pamela Kimball, Mayor. Let's all give them a big round of applause. Congratulations. Did anyone want to take pictures? Oh yeah, and who is team captain or whatever wants to, or coach wants to accept the proclamation?
Go ahead, Frank.
All
You're
of
not
you.
going to be with us for 3 more years. All right.
Congratulations to you and your team. Let's have all the team come forward.
I'll just stand on the chair.
I know, they're too tall. We're not gonna, we may have to go down front.
Because they're leaving the room for us. What do you guys want?
Small one with a number 1.
All right.
You guys can jet if you want to, you can hang out if you want to, it's totally up to you.
Right. You want to listen to the audit, you can stay. All right. Our next item will be our audit presentation. We have Mr. Ahmed Badawi? Badawi? Thank you. Of Badawi and Associates here to present that for us tonight. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Not a clear room, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm guessing nobody's
We
gonna
made
want to
you
take pictures with me and, after the presentation, right?
Nice photo.
All right. Well, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council, management, and members of the audience. My name is Ahmed Badawi with Badawi and Associates. I was the partner on the audit for the city of Lindsay. And today I'm going to present to you the results of the fiscal year 2017 audit. Just wanted to bring to your attention that this is fiscal year 2017 was our first year with the city. So we're really a new audit firm. So we're glad to be here. Thank you for your business. Basically, this is our standard presentation, and I'm going to just let you know what I'm going to cover today. I'll let you know who the engagement team was, what were our deliverables and the scope of our audit, areas we emphasized on during our audit process, the type of audit opinion we issued, and summarize for you some of the numbers in your financial statements, provide you some of the required communications that we have to communicate to you as your independent auditors, and see if you have any questions or comments for me. Of course, you can interrupt me anytime if you do have questions. So in terms of the engagement team, I was the engagement partner or the audit partner. So basically, I'm the one ultimately responsible for the entire audit from planning all the way until the execution. We always have a quality control reviewer. Their role is usually in the background, just reviewing my work, making sure that I adhere to professional standards. So it's kind of a second set of eyes checking my work. The senior on the audit was Edward Basowski, and I can't believe I actually pronounced his name correctly. I've been struggling with it for a long time. We had Ada as our staff, and we also have an IT specialist that we use to evaluate controls embedded into the computer system. Because the city uses off-the-shelf softwares, we as CPAs were usually capable of evaluating that. Normally the IT specialists become more needed when you develop in-house applications and basically do significant changes to some of the applications that you purchase. In terms of our deliverables, we were mainly engaged to provide an opinion on the city's basic financial statements.
This is the document that Brad just distributed, and it is really a report of all your assets, all your liabilities, all your funds, fund balances. Also, because the city is subject to government auditing standards, we are also required to issue a report on our consideration of internal control over financial reporting and also on compliance and other matters. We also are required to perform an agreed upon procedures on your GAN limit, your appropriation limit. And finally, we are required to communicate with the governing body, which is what I'm doing today. In terms of areas of primary audit emphasis or audit risk, we had three main areas that we give special attention, even though, quite frankly, in this audit, I think we gave special attention to almost every area. But one risk that is by default a risk in any audit that we do is management overriding controls. Management is the one that put controls in place. They are the one that design the controls, and they can choose to override it at any time. So we try to use audit procedures to address that risk. For example, we make sure that the staff assigned to complex areas have more experience. We try to incorporate an element of unpredictability in the audit process, so we don't tell the city way in advance every single thing we're going to be doing. We test journal entries prepared by the city. We review estimates that the city prepared and make sure that there is no bias in them. We evaluate business rationale for any unusual transactions. Revenues is also an area of higher risk, and that's by default in most audits. People tend to like to have more revenues and less expenses, so usually the motivation is to overstate revenues, understate expenses. So normally any audit will be working under those assumptions. With revenues, it's actually easy because we send confirmations to many third parties. So, for example, we confirm with the county the property taxes paid and all different types of taxes paid to the city. We also obtain reports from the State Board of Equalization regarding sales tax and a variety of other things. For proprietary funds, we look at consumption, we look at rates, and we compare prior years to current years in terms of consumptions, rates, and see if we can come to the revenues reported by the city. So we actually did a lot of analytics on those proprietary activities. And then finally, pension is an area just the dollar amount is significant, so we spend time basically reviewing journal entries prepared by management. We also communicate with CalPERS. We obtain audit reports from CalPERS auditors confirming to us how much assets or how much money the city has with CalPERS, and a variety of other procedures. In terms of the auditor's report, so we have issued an unmodified opinion, so I want to really kind of break this down. So the first good news is that it's an unmodified opinion, which basically means that we think that the numbers reported on the financial statements are accurate in all material respects. We added 2 paragraphs that normally will not be part of a standard audit opinion. The first paragraph is relating to a going concern, which relates to the city's financial condition. And I'm going to talk about that in more detail. And the second relating to non-compliance. And I'm going to also talk about that in more detail. But what an unmodified audit opinion means, it means that the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects, that all significant policies, accounting policies have been consistently applied, that all estimates are reasonable, and that all disclosures are properly reflected in the financial statements. Wanted to kind of give you an idea about what numbers are in your financial statements, and this is, keep in mind, it's a 30,000-foot view. That's really without diving into any details. And this is comparison over the last 3 years. I do want to highlight that we did not audit fiscal year 15 or fiscal year 16, so we're really just going by what was in the financial statements. So we can't really provide any assurance on these numbers. But basically, like most of our cities, the 2 largest assets that we normally see are cash and investments and capital assets. In your case, cash and investment is not as high as we would normally see in other cities. You have your loans receivables and your capital assets are the 2 largest assets. However, you can see that cash and investment seems to be better than 2 years ago. So at least the balance is improving. But no major activities. Capital assets are just being depreciated and loans receivable are just being slowly paid down. These are all the housing loans that the city have. So that's the composition of your assets over the last 3 years. That's the composition of your liabilities over the last 3 years. And you will see that you have two big numbers here, the non-current liabilities and the pension liabilities. So the non-current liabilities are basically all your outstanding loans, leases, bonds, all those types of debt. And again, no major activities there, just the city paying down as they become due. You can see your pension liability jumped from 6.7 to 8.2 million. Have nothing to do with the city really. It has to do with CalPERS and CalPERS investment performance. So we've seen that increase in every single government agency that we audit this year. So that again, something that really the city can't do much about, at least at this point. Other than that, there is really nothing here worth mentioning. The unearned revenue is really an offset number to the loans receivable because those are very long term, so we don't really recognize the revenues for those until they actually are collected. So that's the composition of your liabilities. And here basically is the composition of your equity, and which is your assets minus your liabilities. So your equity is divided into three categories. The first one is what we call the net investment in capital assets. It's usually the highest. Unfortunately, it is also not in a spendable form. It is not really something that the city can spend. This is basically like looking at your own house minus the mortgage and saying, well, that's how much equity I have. It would not become spendable until you actually sell the house and pay off the mortgage. The only difference is that the city cannot really sell most of these assets because you cannot sell your streets. I mean, you can, but you'll have to really find a buyer. The restricted amounts are amounts that have outside legal restrictions. Those normally represent things like gas tax, money, any measures, basically sales tax measure, unspent proceeds, unspent grant proceeds. So things that are not really under your control. Things that you have to spend them in accordance with legal requirements. And then the unrestricted amount is the amount that is under your control. And it's obviously a negative amount. I want to say that it's actually not very unusual to have that amount as negative. In your case, I think we're going to talk more about the financial condition, but we have seen in a lot of cities this amount go negative because they have recorded their pension liability, something that they haven't done before, which made that number negative. In your case, there is more than that. It's not just the pension liability. There are other things. The general fund, obviously, is negative fund balance, and that's really our biggest concern. Changes in net position. So basically, I mean, you can see that these numbers are really fluctuating, and oftentimes, basically, what happens is that last year, I believe it's fiscal year 16, there were some significant grants that the city does not have them or the projects were completed. So you see that in fiscal year 16, the results were much better because of those grants, but then in fiscal year 17, that's not the case. I do want to say that this is your governmental funds and your proprietary funds, so your water and sewer and McDermott and all of that. Your governmental funds are actually okay in terms of revenues over expenditures. It's the proprietary funds, the McDermott, the Wellness Center, and those activities that are really causing these losses. Wanted to give you a comparison, and that's actually a good comparison that compares your tax revenues to net cost of service. Net cost of service, we define it as basically the cost of running all city departments minus any revenues that those departments are able to generate on their own. So if you look, for example, at public safety, you will see, well, how much does it cost to run public safety, and then are they able to get grants and to charge fees and other things to reduce their cost. And the idea is to see how dependent are these departments on tax revenues. Every single city we audit, of course, they are dependent on tax revenues, otherwise we would not be paying taxes. It's a question of whether your taxes are sufficient to cover that net cost of service. And in your case, it is sufficient. You can see that your net cost of service was about 2.6 million, your tax revenues were about 3.2 million. So it's actually, in terms of the service, it's actually sufficient. I think the issue that we have is that the general fund is having to transfer money to McDermott to subsidize those activities, and that's really what drains the general fund. But in terms of revenues over expenses in the general fund, it seems to be actually heading in the right direction. So I wanted to look at the general fund specifically. The general fund have as of fiscal year 2017, a deficit fund balance of about $9.4 million. Your expenditures is about $5 million a year. Normally, the Government Finance Officers Association recommend that you have at least 2 to 4 months worth of expenditures in your fund balance. You obviously do not have that. One big change that occurred, I'm sure you're aware of it, is that there were a lot of advances between the general fund and the McDermott, and those were written off, and that's really what caused the general fund to go into significant deficit. The reason they were written off is because there was just really no ability to repay those back. So the city has decided to write those off. One of the numbers in your financial statements are your pension liability, and I wanted to just highlight to you that the pension liability is really an estimate, and it's an estimate based on assumptions that CalPERS are the one that developed. And I wanted to show you how sensitive your numbers are to those assumptions. So one of the most significant assumptions that CalPERS use is the investment rate of return, how much they're going to earn on their investments. And your numbers were calculated based on an assumption that they're going to earn about 7.65%. So I wanted to show you what your number would look like if that 7.65 becomes 8.65 or becomes 6.65. Obviously, if it becomes 8.65, your liability goes down from $8.2 million to almost $5 million. If they use 6.65, your liability jumped from 8.2 to 12.2 million. The 8.65 is extremely unlikely scenario. The 6.65 is a very likely scenario. They have already switched to 7%, and they are continuing to lower that rate. So my opinion is that the 12.2 million is a lot more representative of your actual liability than the 8.2 million. And in fiscal year 18, you're going to see another significant increase because CalPERS have lowered that discount rate and they're using a lower rate. What that means to the city means more contributions, that CalPERS is going to ask you to put more money. And that's obviously one of our concerns, that if you don't have reserves, and if you're continuing to subsidize other operations such as McDermott, then the city may find itself in a situation where it's unable to meet those CalPERS contributions. So it's one of the reasons why we're giving that going concern paragraph, is that basically all of those issues that we have concerns about. Also, the city offer retiree medical benefits. And this is basically the two most recent actuarial studies that the city has performed on those benefits. So you can see that the most recent one was done as of fiscal year 2014. And the city have a $2 million liability. And the city has not put any money aside for that. Which means that the city is really on pay-as-you-go basis. Basically, as those benefits become due, the city just pay for them. But you're not treating it the same way as pension, where you're actually putting money aside in a trust to be invested and pay for those benefits in the future. I can't say that all cities are doing that. Definitely those benefits are significantly less funded than the pension. So we see that across the board. So this is basically just a very summarized information about what's in your financial statements. I did want to provide you some of the required communications and talk about the findings that we have in the audit. So on this slide, I wanted to, on the left side, you will see our responsibility as your independent auditors in the process, versus on the right side, you will see management's responsibility. So our main responsibility is really to provide an opinion on your financial statements. We issue those it's a two-page document that basically says, this is what we've done, and this is our opinion on the financial statements. We are also responsible for evaluating internal control over financial reporting. So we are responsible for evaluating how the city processes payroll, how the city pays vendors, how the city collects revenues, how it's recorded in the records, and provide basically a recommendation on how to tighten that process. Also, we use that evaluation to plan our audit and do our risk assessment to determine which areas will more likely have errors, and we can focus our effort there. We also are responsible for evaluating the tone at the top, making sure that management and the governing body are sending the right message to the rest of the organization about the importance of controls, the consequences of committing fraud, about the importance of addressing audit findings and coming up with corrective action to address those findings. We're also responsible for evaluating whether the city complied with the different laws and regulations that are in effect that could have a material effect on the financial statements. We're responsible for ensuring that your financial statements are clear and transparent and is not misleading in any way to the reader. And then finally, we're responsible for communicating with the city council. Management have a lot of responsibilities in this process. So management is ultimately responsible for the financial statements. Even though you hired our firm, we work for the council to certify those numbers and say, yes, they are fairly stated. Our audit only provides a reasonable assurance. We do not look at every transaction. We do sampling based on risk assessment. We also have thresholds for materialities, so we don't look at every $1,000 transaction. So that does not give us, would not put us in a situation where we can actually provide absolute assurance. So having us as your auditor does not relieve management from its responsibility, I guess what I'm trying to say. Also, management is responsible for establishing and maintaining internal control, for making all financial records available to us during the audit process, for adjusting the financials for any material misstatements, for establishing controls to prevent and detect fraud, inform us of all known and suspected fraud, comply with laws and regulations, and take corrective action on any audit findings. In terms of our independence, we obviously are called the independent auditors, so we have to make sure that we remain independent from the city. So we follow the AICPA rules, we follow the California Board of Accountancy rules. Basically, we look at the independence in appearance and in substance. So, of course, in substance, meaning that we evaluate any additional service we offer to the city. We make sure that those services do not conflict with us being independent auditors. We circulate questionnaires to all of our firm personnel, asking them to identify any direct or indirect relations with the city or city personnel. We immediately remove those individuals from the audit if those relationships were identified. We also focus on independence in appearance. Even though we enjoyed working with management, I'm pretty sure you didn't see us going out having drinks with management. We just do not want to be seen as just too close with management. Even though it would not affect our independence, we just do not want to have that appearance that maybe we're not independent. In terms of timing of the audit, not within the time frame communicated in our engagement letter. There were a lot of challenges in this audit, definitely. Management has done everything they can to work with us, to identify the issues, to try to come up with solutions. But there were definitely a lot of challenges. We also looked at new accounting standards that needed to be implemented. So those were some of the accounting standards that we considered during the year. None of them were applicable to the city, but we discussed them with the city and made sure that they were not applicable. I wanted to also notify you that there are some estimates in your financial statements. Not every number is an actual number. Estimates are okay to use as long as there is a reasonable basis behind them. And I just wanted to give you some examples of what those numbers are. So the depreciation expense is an estimate. All your pension liabilities and retiree medical benefits, all of those are estimated numbers. I also wanted to just list for you some of the important disclosure in the financial statements, just in case you're going through it. These are some of the notes that we think add important information to the numbers. All right, and then difficulties encountered during the audit, I'm saying basically see findings below. So we're going to talk about that. In terms of significant audit adjustment, management has not posted all proposed audit adjustments. This is typical, actually. We had a lot of adjustments, and sometimes the adjustments are so small that it's just management basically say, it's just too small for us to worry about it, and we're responsible to let you know. But we were obviously okay with management not posting it because they were really just very, very minor. In terms of significant risk or exposure, there were significant risks and exposures identified. Potential liabilities from non-compliance are disclosed in the financial statements. So we're going to talk about those non-compliance and what the potential liabilities are. In terms of disagreement with management, we really had no disagreement with management. I believe we had a very good working relation with management. Regardless of the situation, I think management acknowledged the facts and We understand that this happened in the past, but management showed every effort to basically remediate those situations and come up with a corrective action, worked very closely with us to tell us what they're doing, kept us abreast on the progress. So we really have no issues at all with how we interacted with management. We felt that basically we all recognize the issues and just want to resolve them, basically. So now we'll talk about the findings. So we have two categories of findings. We have what we call material weaknesses, and those are the most severe. Basically, this is the most severe we can provide, is what we call a material weakness. And we have significant deficiencies, and those are the categories right after that. The material weaknesses are the deficit, fund balance, and going concern issues. Basically, the way we see it is that your general fund just really has no money. It was relying on, the reason why last year it showed positive fund balance is because there was a big receivable from McDermott that was making that fund balance positive. But there was really no payment. McDermott had no ability to repay back. And when we talked with the city, we basically told them that they need to take action on that. It just cannot sit like this on the books forever with no payment. So the city wrote off those advances, and that really led to the deficit in the general fund. But the issues continued, that basically, even though the general fund cover its expenses, but the general fund still owe a lot of money to other funds that needs to be paid back. And it continues to subsidize the McDermott, and that's putting a lot of strain, obviously, on the general fund. And then, of course, the McDermott and the Wellness Center, at least as of the date of our audit, they were definitely not in good financial condition. I understand that city is working on plans on addressing the Wellness Center and McDermott, but we're talking historical information as of June 30, 2017. That was really the situation. The non-compliance and so basically the first one, we have concerns about the city's financial health and its ability to continue to pay bills uninterrupted. The second findings regarding non-compliance was grant regulations. So anytime basically you have those significant fund balance deficits, but the general fund and the other funds continue to pay bills, we always have to ask ourselves, well, where is this money coming from? Because the city pooled all its money together. Basically, the analysis that this money came from restricted resources, from HUD money, from other sources of money. As we started looking and talking with management, a lot of this information was really provided to us by management. We basically realized that there were funds that were used in the past in a way that should not have been used, either to basically loan the general fund to continue operation, or to basically provide housing loans on maybe certain loans that did not meet the criteria. Also some issues with Caltrans, with grants that basically Caltrans feel that it wasn't spent in the right fashion. So all of that really, even though it happened in the past, the issue is still outstanding. They were not resolved. So there is a significant amount of uncertainty as to what will be the outcome from all those issues. We're very satisfied that management is aggressively talking with those agencies in full transparency, letting them know what happened, what do we need to do to fix it. But as of the date we issued the report, there was really no resolution on any of those matters, and the uncertainty remains. We did not modify our opinion because of that, but we did add a paragraph saying that there is a significant amount of uncertainty as a result of those non-compliance. And then finally, the last material weakness we had was basically restatement of previously issued financial statements. So those financial statements that you have a no disclosure that basically revised a lot of the previously audited financial statements because of errors and things that were discovered during the audit. So anytime we have to revise the previously audited financial statements, it's an indication that the city's internal controls did not detect those errors timely, that the financial statements went out, got issued without the city's internal controls detecting those errors. So we are required anytime there is a material restatement to those financial statements to basically give a comment about internal controls relating to that. The other comments that we have are less severe in terms of basically their significance, but they're definitely important. Record keeping of capital assets. Even though we got to a point where we gave a clean opinion on capital assets, we were not 100% happy with everything we saw. We did see that the city was missing some details about some of those assets, where, for example, we look at the list of assets and we see in McDermott, for example, $300,000 for fitness equipment. And we ask, well, what are those fitness equipment? And there are no records, just one number, fitness equipment, $300,000, even. So no dollars, no cents, just $300,000 even. So it just really brings a lot of questions about, does the city know what those equipments are? Where are they? How many of them? Are they treadmills? Are they cycling machines? So they were not significant enough for us to modify our audit opinion. City did go through a significant exercise of accounting for all its land, all its building, basically vehicles, but there were some assets that were still not properly accounted for. So we definitely want to see improvement in the record keeping of capital assets. Also, in terms of segregation of duties in accounts payable and in payroll, so we normally like to see basically certain duties segregated. For example, the person who set up the employees in the system, we don't like to see that same person paying the employees. It creates those opportunities of creating fictitious employees and paying them. Same with accounts payable, where the person who's setting up the vendor in the system should not be the same person who's actually cutting checks for the vendor. They need to be separated. Oftentimes in small operations, it's not possible to separate them because you don't have enough staff, you don't have enough resources. So we're suggesting some mitigating procedures, basically to, for example, we're suggesting that maybe finance should review somebody obviously different than accounts payable or payroll to review all the new vendors that were created, for example, every check run, or all the changes that happened to personnel files in terms of pay rate increases or termination or new hires every pay period, to make sure that those are appropriate changes before the payroll is processed. And then finally, the control over accounts receivable. Basically, this is more of a system limitation than anything else, where the city is reporting certain amount as of the end of the fiscal year as outstanding balances receivable from customers, from other agencies. But when we asked the city to provide us a listing of those receivables, the city was not able to do so. And because the system cannot go back in time. Just you can only run a report as of today. But if you want to run a report as of June 30th, the system will not allow you to do that, at least to the best of our knowledge. So the solution will be, obviously, a new system will be an expensive solution, so it's probably not a viable option. But another solution can be to maybe run the report on the last day of the fiscal year. So when it's time for the audit, you already ran that report and you have it, so you don't have to run into that issue. So just maybe part of the procedures of preparing for the audit can be that. So those were all the findings that we have. I do want to say that those are significant findings. This is not, we audit many cities in California, and I only have 2 cities that are with findings like that. What I do want to say is that for those 2 cities, definitely one city, I don't feel that management realize the significance of the situation, and they're not really taking much action regarding that. And then we have Lindsay, where I felt completely the opposite, where I think management totally understand the severity of the situation, and I feel that they are really doing their best to try to address the situation to the best they can. And keeping in mind also that most of these happened in the past. So prior to me being here, probably prior to most management being here. But we still have to address them and deal with the situation. So these were basically all of our findings. We did obtain a letter from management right before we issue our report. This letter is management representing to us that they have disclosed all known facts, that they have disclose to us any fraud or illegal acts that they're aware of, that they own all assets, and a variety of other representations. We're not aware of any other significant accounting or auditing matters for which management had hired another firm. Oftentimes when there are differences of opinion, management may hire another firm to get a second opinion on a matter that maybe we're in disagreement with, but we're not aware that this has occurred. Other than our engagement letter and the representation letter, we had no other significant communication with management. There were obviously some material uncertainties relating to events and conditions. That's mainly the non-compliance issues and the potential outcome from those non-compliance issues. And then we have not become aware of any instance of fraud or illegal acts that were not disclosed to us by the city. This is basically just FYI. This is a listing of all the new accounting standards that are coming your way with the year that needs to be implemented. So you can see that management will definitely stay busy working with all those accounting standards. And of course, we will assist with the implementation of those. So that's pretty much everything I have. I do want to say thank you very much. Not every audit is as challenging, but at the same time, we definitely enjoyed working with Brett and enjoyed working with management. And, we feel that the city is heading in the right direction, and we hope that you will get there soon. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Badawi. I think that was a very clear presentation. I don't think for the council the findings were a surprise. We've been dealing with these issues for some time, and I think we've made some progress on drilling down on them, and we appreciate your work and your working with staff and your suggestions on how we can improve. Are there any questions or other comments from the council?
Well, just being the newbie and being new to all this, how often are audits usually conducted?
Annually.
Annually.
We're definitely very late. An audit should be done
We've seen
within-
later. So
I'm sorry?
we're not unhappy. We've seen later. The year hasn't closed yet. We're not into the next year. All good.
But the standard practice is most cities would finish their audit by December 31st, so within 6 months from the end of the fiscal year.
Maybe next year.
We hope so, yes. We'll work with Greg on that.
We're starting the next one shortly.
I'm sure you are. All right. Danny? All right, we thank you for being here and making this very clear presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
We need a minute order. No, what do we need? We need a minute order to accept the audit.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Okay, our next item has to do with firework permits. We only have 3 council members. 2 of us usually excuse ourselves. Mario, so what do we do tonight?
I don't think you're going to have to. I don't think we did last year, because I think this question came up. You guys aren't individually gaining anything, even if you're related to one of these groups, so I don't see a reason you have to.
All right. With that, then, we will turn our time over to Brian Sponhurst to present this.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Madam Mayor and Council. Tonight I'll be going over this year's request for a fire booth temporary use permits. We have permit number 18-18 for La Puerta Abierta, permit number 18-19 for Royal Rangers, and temporary use permit 18-20 for the Lindsay Cultural Arts Council Fire Museum. These have been groups that we've dealt with over the past years, so nothing really new there, as well as they have elected to keep the same locations as previous years, so again, nothing new there as well. Every site has adequate access. There won't be too much of an impact as far as circulation. There's just no differences or issues compared to previous years. Everything is remaining the same. There have been no new requests or alterations made this year. So unless council has any specific questions that I can dive into, I think we'll just try to move this along and go to the individual review of each requested permit.
Any general questions? Or?
Okay, awesome. So the format does require we review these individually and approve them individually. So I'll start with the temporary use permit 1818 for La Puerta Abierta. They will be located at their church site just north of us here, off of Hermosa and Mirage. All fireworks stands are looking to be open from the June 29th to July 4th. Every site has adequate access. There's no congestions or any other issues expected. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions for 18-18.
Okay, would entertain a motion to approve resolution 1828? I think it's 1828, not 1818, but.
Oh, I'm sorry, resolution 1828. The temporary use, the permit number is 18-18, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Move for approval. Do I have to read the motion?
And moved by
Second.
Cortez and seconded. The clerk, please take roll.
Councilmember Cortez,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Salinas,
Aye.
Mayor Kimball.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item.
All right, the next item is temporary use permit 18-19, which is resolution 18-29. So it's pretty neat that they're lining up nicely for us tonight. It's for the Royal Rangers. They do have a connection with La Puerta Abierta. I believe we went over this a little bit last year. They are separate organizations. They'll be similar to a Catholic Church and the Boy Scouts of America. There is some relation as far as the Royal Rangers, build their events and their whole system off of certain core values of that church. But other than that, they are separate organizations. The money that's raised for Royal Rangers isn't going to go towards La Puerta Abierta. It's going to go towards Royal Rangers events and different trips they do. They do very much in the team character building, and they're very much separated in that sense. And that we went over a little bit last year. There was a little bit some confusion there. So I just want to touch on that a little bit. Other than that, they'll be located in the Tony's Pizza parking lot off of Hermosa, and the same location as last year. Again, they'll be looking to operate from June 29th to July 4th. They have adequate access to the site, and there's no anticipated issues regarding congestion or any traffic issues.
All right. The next one the council like to take on resolution 1829.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Would the clerk please take roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Salinas,
Aye.
Councilmember Cortez,
Aye.
Mayor Kimball.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item.
All right, and the last permit tonight is for temporary use permit 18-20, which is resolution 18-30 for the Lindsay Cultural Arts Council Fire Museum. They will be located in the Olivewood Shopping Center, near, I'd say in between Little Caesars and Save Mart, towards the outer edge of the main parking lot area. Again, there's plenty of parking in that shopping center. There's no anticipated issues with congestion or traffic. They'll be, again, open from the 29th to July 4th. And happy to answer any questions regarding that.
Entertain a motion to approve resolution 1830.
So moved.
Second.
Clerk, please take roll.
Councilmember Cortez,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Salinas,
Aye.
Mayor Kimball.
Aye. Motion carries.
All right, thank
Thank
you very
you.
much.
I am aware that people come to these booths requesting the aerials, that are illegal and so forth. If there was a way to assist them with posting something that identified our fines for.
So in addition to a few banners we'll be putting in the roundabout regarding our new fine setup, we'll also be making some posters that will be provided to each booth so they can set up there. And I believe they also have contact information for the city if they have any questions. We'll be happy to advise on what those new regulations are and what the consequences can be.
Right. So you'll provide those for them. That would be perfect.
Yes, I think it's at least 5 to 10 will be provided for each booth so they can hang some up and pass them out. And then we also have some banners that will be going in the roundabout as well to advise of the new changes.
Brian, can you talk to the company that actually brings the fireworks in and have them use their resources to do all the posters and instead of putting our staff to do it? Because it's beneficial to them ultimately. I mean, it's beneficial to the three groups, but it's more beneficial because they're doing it statewide.
Yeah, that's definitely something we can look into. I'm not sure if it's too late in this season to put the wheels in motion on that, but that's definitely a conversation we can have with them for future. This is going to be the first year. It's brand new to everybody, and I agree. It is in their benefit to let people know, hey, don't put your money over there. Put it in something that's legal and that's going to get you guys safely through the night without any issues. I can definitely agree with that, and I'll look at getting the wheels in motion on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
There has been minimal staff time put in already, and that's something I think we're going to review sometime tomorrow, that there's a finished banner and a finished poster that's going to go to each of the locations. But in future, because again, like Brian said, this is brand new.
Yeah.
And so in the future, we make the request to the organizations that present the applications that part of the requirement is contact their supplier, so they understand that they provide any future notifications of this change.
I know about 1 month, probably in May or so, they have a big, to show off all their new stuff. And all the people that are involved in this usually go to it.
Yeah.
So if they were able to, give out their information during that time, and
definitely,
it's to benefit them. I mean, they're going to make more money out of the deal.
Yeah. I think that's everybody's best interest in that one. It's a good idea.
All right, thanks. Okay, the next item will be our budget preview presentation by Director of Finance Brett Harmon.
All right, we'll see which one you enjoy more, the audit or this one. So, let's, if you hit Control L, it should go to full screen there. Okay. All right, so let's go through the 2018-2019 budget review. The budget begins, so you have to have my date there. The budget starts for July 1, and so we're just about there. We've had all the departments starting this Friday will freeze purchases. We're making more purchases for us this fiscal year to help us kind of wrap up everything that's there to be ready to roll over to the new year when that comes. Would you step down one slide for us? All right, so we're going to get some perspective. Picture on the left is Lindsay many years ago. Picture on the right is Lindsay today. I was able to go out in the street and not get run over in the process of taking that one. But what I really wanted to show is that there's a big difference between these two. And while budgets and things may seem tight now, we can grow into a future that's just as much a pronounced difference from today to the future as it is between the past and what we see today in the picture. So just to kind of give some context there of kind of what we're facing. So really want to go over our mission with this. As you heard Ahmed say, there's not money in the general fund for really anything extra, let alone paying the reserves that we need right now. And so we're focusing primarily on basic civic services, just bare bones for a while until we get things under us. With the vision of being a healthy, vibrant, economic, sustainable community, that's what we're trying to get to. And then it's going to take integrity, focus, practical decision making, and remembrance of whom we serve to really get to that point. So let's go through the review of what happened in 17-18 before we go into 18-19. And as we go through, the numbers you're going to see on in the presentation are net numbers. So instead of trying to show the millions in general fund revenues and millions in expenses, I'm going to focus on just what's the net change at the end of the year. Do we go up or go down? And so when revenues are greater than expenditures, that's where we're happy. When revenues are less than expenditures, that's where we're sad. So let's move on and take a look at what happened in 17-18. So the end of last year, about the same time we adopted the budget for 17-18, the general fund was expected to have an $83,000 surplus at the end of the year, just for that year. We're not addressing deficit repayment, but just that year's revenues versus expenses. As of this morning, it looks like we're about 18.6 instead of the 82.9. So measure O wasn't quite as much as we thought as it got going, and we had some additional costs in the wellness center that the general fund is needing to to cover wellness center because it's not able to make on its own. So that's where some of that money has gone to. McDermott, we planned to lose $414,000. The budget had $114,000, but had the general fund sending $300,000 to it. It would have helped. We're not making that transfer because the general fund doesn't have it to send. And so we need to compare what the budget would have been like without that transfer. We're going to have a $414,000 loss in McDermott this year. Stopping in December, end of December, we had a $500,000 loss in the year. Most likely that number would have grown probably significantly had we stayed through the remainder part of the year. So it's worse than what we're expecting for the year, but I think we saved ourselves in making that step. Wellness and Aquatic, $3,400 positive. We're looking at zero right now because we're seeing $125,000 from the general fund to wellness. We're proposing to. So water, planned to be positive. It has gone negative this year. And part of that is what Mike was talking about, or Bill mentioned earlier in his staff report, dealing with fixing these units out there to get that water flowing. And how to cut into the water fund to pay for those, and we'll need to backfill this loss next year, and we'll see those numbers coming up. Sewer has done well because we've delayed capital improvement projects, and we'll see the impact of those when we get to that part. And refuse, we've had the school district gave us notice recently they are backing out and going directly to Mid-Valley. Financially for them, it's a sound decision. It hurts us, but they're making decisions best for the school district, and you can't really fault them on their logic there, but I wish it wouldn't have happened. So we need to, this plays into the preparation for Prop 218 to deal with refuse, because as of right now and going into next year, this system cannot support itself. And Mid-Valley has passed on rate increases that we guaranteed to say that we'll fund them. I think they're done being patient with us. So let's go on to the next one. So the rebuilding stage. So what's going on? Measure O, 17-18 was only a partial year and had some implementation costs at the state level and the local level. I knew about the ones for election, didn't realize the state was going to tack on additional communication costs on their side. So they took those out of the initial funds they sent to us to cover their costs there. And so the net that came to us was lower than expected. 18-19 is going to be the first full year, and things are looking okay. Really, the higher gas prices go, the better we do on both sides. Sales tax and on Measure O. In the people, with Movement Dermot under private management, and we recruited a new recreation manager. I think you've all seen Lisa's work around town. We're so blessed to have her here. She's doing a fantastic job with recreation and wellness center. And then service, giving us direction to focus on public safety through Measure O, and resources to focus on our core services. So here's a brick wall we keep running into over and over and over again. CalPERS, despite the desire to hide under my desk, as he talked about what could happen when the discount rate changes, he's going to have to face that in the future. And CalPERS is, for the next 25 years, is going to be a bane of all cities, except for maybe Newport Beach. It's one just pay up for the bill, right? So we can't. Reserves are non-existent, and dealing with the advances in the future is going to be something that we need to figure out the best way to handle that. So same chart structure, looking at 18-19 here. So proposed in 18-19, by the end of the year, expect to have a $34,000 increase or net positive in the general fund. This is before anything goes to reserves. So that's just within this 1 year, how is it performing? And this is after postponing advance repayments and before we have to figure out what's going to come from HCD. We're in those negotiations with them. The wellness and aquatic, again, goes positive because we're seeing money there from the general fund of about $87,000. Water goes positive this year. Sewer goes negative, and refuse continues on its trend of being negative there. So talking about recovery.
So something that's gone on this last year is that we did not do street projects like we had in the past. Part of it has just been trying to figure out where our cash is and dealing with that part first, then moving over with the roundabout we're dealing with, and other projects that are taking time there in city services. The result of that, though, is that there's a lot of money available for streets projects this next year. So we're looking at close or over $3 million worth of taxes available for streets. When Ahmed was mentioning earlier restricted funds, this is one of those restricted funds. We're going to tap into this for general stuff. It's there for streets. And so this list on the left is the projects that staff is proposing to council for the capital improvement projects for streets for this year. The one in the bottom right-hand corner is for the 1920 year. You'll see that there's about a $200,000 surplus in 1920 and even a little bit in 1819. That's because we want to kind of hold off a bit on SB1 funds, the fuel tax, until we see whether or not it's actually going to be there. If it gets repealed, we don't want to count on it. And so it's about $200,000 this next year. So we're kind of separating that out, which is why there's a surplus. And so as we go through those lists, are there any of those that catch council's eye that maybe you'd like to swap, move from 1819 into 1920? Mike's here too to chime in on the feasibility of moving different ones around and what that may do in their production process.
City Hall parking, what is that? Where is that at?
So it's the back parking lot, just weather damage. It's starting to break up. We have the truck come through for the garbage, and it's just not handling that very well.
Mike, I have a quick question for you. The numbers that you show there, do they reflect the increased fuel prices in the relationship to asphalt purchase? Probably couldn't forecast that, could you?
No, they do not.
So the prices may be, the cost that you see may be greater than, the jobs may cost more than they're shown there. Because we had inexpensive gas for several years, and it's been this year that it's trended up. And I know with the loss of Jim Witten, we haven't been able to go through and redo this stuff.
You know, when I talked to Brian, he had talked about the Orange Street. It was going to connect to Tulare Road.
Right, that's identified in one of the sewer capital improvement programs. It's a storm drain project, essentially. So before we do any street work, we really need to focus on finishing that storm drain connector.
Mike, have you ever had a $3 million year? No. So it'll be quite ambitious, but next year should look very different by the end of the year than the city looks this year.
So is the council satisfied with the 1819 projects list at this point?
On our capital improvements on our list for the 5-year list or whatever, are all these projects on that?
Yes. Yes, these projects have been developed over the last 5 years. And so as projects are done, obviously they're taken off, and all the other projects council has either reviewed in the past or proposed are on this list.
Because what I like doing is when we're going to do a big project, the machines are the equipment's already here.
Right.
And so I mean, this could be like a general list, and then when we get to it, I mean, actually, if there's a street right next to it that's a year later down the road, but we can get it done because the equipment, I'm not sure what. The mobilization and stuff. I know we save money that way. Just to look at it that way, can we approve it this way? And
yes, the way the projects are grouped, at least on this slide, as you can see where you have Cape Seal, General Seal, you have some prep work on Kern Street. Those ramps are nowhere near ADA compliant. And then you have rehab work, which bringing in different types of equipment, mobilization costs are much higher when you do a rehab project compared to the Cape Seal or standard seal. So, but that's a $3 million list. That's pretty extensive.
I just look like doing that. Save money some more.
I'm satisfied with the list.
Water has a list as well. These are where things start to get a little tricky. We have funding for the projects we're looking at for 18-19. The well 15 renovations, some test wells, and other work with words that Mike understands that my world doesn't so much. We have enough funding for those. It's the following year where we start to get into bigger projects that there is not funding sufficient to meet those. We're going to be short about $1.3 million. And so this is where the Prop 218 calculations start to come in. Does the water systems we have it set right now provide enough to cover the costs of the infrastructure and fixing and rehabilitating the water system in the city?
When do we plan on going for the 218?
ASAP.
Pretty quick, right?
Your 2019-20 are basically your city
No, that should.
projects.
That's a fault of duplicating slides. That we're looking at the 18-19. I need to. I will show you later. When we have our closed session first.
Okay.
My apologies on that.
But in answer to Council's question, Prop 218s are something that have been on our radar. We've held off just a little bit looking at the water plant, some of the things that we hadn't seen to be as, we didn't know we'd have to go in and do the filter banks and recoat them and so forth. But my direction, staff, is I want to move this as quickly as we can so that we can start generating the revenues to ensure that our utilities are going to be properly maintained.
With that prop, what are we looking at as far as like the change in pricing?
It'll always be small. We will let you know as soon as we get close to that. We'll talk to you, but we have to talk to you before we do anything. But it'll be small. That's just it. Pennies can make all the difference when you have 3,000 account holders.
Do you look at the amount that we're not making, that we have to pay out, and then that divides it up and you get the percentage off of that or something? Or?
We look at what's going out, that we look at what our deficiency is right now, and we're also looking at, because so many things have been dumped into the general fund, we look at how we are funding Mike's trucks, for example. Typically they'll come out of the general fund, but wait, what are we using the trucks for? We're reading water meters, we're repairing things. Some portion of that should be coming from those utility funds. That leads us to Jim.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're looking at those kinds of things and different equipment, and we want to make sure we can justify what we do, but we want to do the 218s that can help us move into the future, and also as far as we legally can have a CPI index associated with it, so we're not going back every year or two to do that.
It's different than like the tax, like the sales tax. I mean, you can do the sales tax just because you want it. With the enterprise funds, we have to, when you see those, they'll be justified basically to the penny. How much does it cost to actually provide the service? And you're not allowed to go above that. If you guys want to subsidize it in some way, you can. There's nothing wrong with that. But either whether we do it internally or we have somebody outside do what's called a rate study, and it says somebody should be paying X amount for water per gallon or whatever it is, or X amount for refuse. This is how much it actually costs. And so it's not a situation where we say, well, we're losing money in this fund, we've got to adjust the rates to make up the money. We have to justify what it actually costs. And if it's, the breakdown has to fit that way. So it's not, we won't come up with the rates to close the gap. The rates should justify themselves of whatever the number is. And we've talked, we've been talking about this for probably 2 years.
Since I've been in this job.
Yeah, and so what we'd like to do is do it one time, and you can do it up to 5 years, and it'll adjust automatically with inflation. And so it may not adjust at all. It may adjust, maybe 2 or 3%. But we do that so we don't have to keep coming back every single year. If something happens and all of a sudden now it's more expensive to deliver the water, we don't have to keep coming back all the time. And then in 5 years, when that time is up, 5 years is the most you can go out. And so we'll look at it then, and maybe they don't have to be adjusted. Maybe everything's still good based on what if the fund is healthy or not. But then if not, we'll come back and do another 218 for the next one.
Do you recall the last 218, how many years you did it for?
We did one when I first came on in 2015. For Mike, it was,
I think it was in 2005 that the last rate increase.
we did
one.
We brought refuse
We
back
did
up to
218 on
2009.
That was the adjustment back, right?
Bringing it back, yeah. But we didn't figure in a CPI with that when we did it. But we had come in about 2000, when Rich came on, we reduced the amounts that we were charging for refuse. And we ran for several years and we recognized that we were digging ourselves in the hole. And so took it back up to 2009 levels at that time.
Yeah, that's the most important thing is to recognize that the enterprise funds, like they don't have to be, but they have to be self-sustaining, because otherwise you're just moving money from your general fund to cover the cost. And there's a very real cost to that. I mean, that's how the rates are structured. It's completely different from the sales tax, where you could say, hey, we want it 1% because that will help us out the most, or 0.5% because that'll pass. These really have to be justified.
It costs 10,000, we should be getting 10,000.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And isn't that identified too in our charter that they have to be self-sustaining?
Well, yeah, I mean that's true there. I mean that's how they're designed. And it could be the case. I mean, it's not too many times you get that, but if you're overcharging a particular fund, you need to make that adjustment as well.
Okay.
So I sent the list to Maria. She's going to try and pull up. In the meantime, I'll go through kind of slowly. There's a DBP mitigation.
Maria, have you lost your screen up there? Yeah. Okay.
So the DBP mitigation is $350,000 in 1920. There's a water main line replacement of $185,000. There's a filtration project construction at well 14, that's $800,000. That's the big one. And well 14 renovations, another $160,000. SCADA expansion, $25,000. Water treatment plant filter bank renovation, $275,000. I think that's what that one's going to be. New domestic well is $2,225,000, and that's going to come from Prop 1 funds for that one. And then an urban water management plan for $150,000. So some pretty large projects, primarily well 14 and a new well next year, along with expanding the filter bank renovations. And all of that will be in the final.
And I would just say that we're at a point, council, where our water system is old. When Bill Drennan was here, he put a fair amount of impetus on. We went from a 1 million gallon storage tank up to a 4 million gallon storage tank. We had one 12-inch supply line coming off the canal. We now have two 12-inch supply lines coming off the canal. I remember where we had some 4-inch lines, providing water services out in some of the older neighborhoods. They've been improved. But Bill's been gone for a while now. And we've been focusing on community development, McDermott wellness, and that sort of thing. And we're getting back into the season of needing to take a hard look at our infrastructure. Not sexy, but very necessary. So it's good that we recognize it. We have Ralph Gutierrez who helps us with this, the consultant. And so it's time, and needing to go out with the Prop 218, the timing is really good to address all these things that we have been behind on. Perhaps we've deferred some maintenance because of some other priorities. It's time to get back to it.
So column C in this spreadsheet up here is the 1920 year. And starting with line, or the DBP mitigation, 350,000, you'll see the ones that line up with the names on the left are the projects that's scheduled for that 1920 year. So we're going to sewer then. Looks like that's kind of off center there a little bit. It's missing part of the. It's fine. Okay. So short list of projects here. For the 18-19 year, total cost $235,000. Expected sources of $200,000, so we're to be short in sewer by $34,800. And then for the 19-20 projects estimated at $1.1 million, with only $95,000 expected source for a difference of $1,065,000. So those are the master plan update is $500,000 next year, some basic improvements of 100. There's the Orange Avenue Harvard Park at 150,000. Any comments on these, Mike?
What is the update master plans?
We have sewer, water, and storm drain master plans. Periodically, you need to take a look at them to see if they're adequate to provide the level of service that you need in the community. Where are the new subdivisions? Where are the new businesses or industry? And ours have some age to them. And they're not cheap to do.
That may not be enough to cover all three.
And typically, you actually need that to go hand in glove with doing a new full-blown general plan.
So you're talking about a 218. Can you put water, sewer, and refuse all together, or you have to separate them out?
It would technically be 3 separate hearings, but we can do them on the same day, all at one time. So.
But when you
When you're
like
going to
mail
vote?
them out to the community, is it like one
One
ballot
vote?
or whatever, or is it 3 separate?
I think we can do it with one ballot, but it would be 3 separate entries. So it would address each one individually on the ballot.
And it's a protest vote.
Right, I understand that. But that is what you're recommending, it appears here, is that we need to increase rates in all of those, in all 3 of those.
And with that vote, is there a certain number that we need to get so that, what is it?
When we did the last one in 2015, there needed to be, I'm trying to remember, we had close to 3,000 ratepayers that we sent this out to. So 50% plus 1 must be in opposition to it for it to fail. So the number we were looking for was about 1,350, and there were some movements out there in opposition to this, and we had 350 no votes. Thereabouts.
And some ugly council meetings, but, yeah. Okay.
All right, and the next one then looks at the general citywide. And so there's one before this one. So some are different projects around City Hall. Public safety roof renovation. Right now there are some places where the roof leaks, and it happens to bring water into the area where all the sensitive computers are for the evidence and other programs the police runs. And so the chief has kindly reminded us that that needs to be fixed. So we have pricing there, $50,000 in May. I think the latest bids we've had might reduce that amount, but it's only partially funded through the general fund. The wellness parking lot, seal and stripe, that's something we hope to get some funding through the Lindsay Hospital Board to cover that one. So all the ones in this list that have asterisks are places where we may not have full funding for them yet. And so there's the list of the top projects, list at the bottom are equipment needs. We're looking at some different ways to bring in some trucks. The ones that we have for our city services crew are they're CNG ones, and those are no longer operable after 2020. So we'll need to have new vehicles to replace those before then. So we can get the work done. So we're looking at making some purchases on those through the year through the state contract for those, and that'd be the best price. And they'll be kind of bare bones trucks, just to make sure they get from point A to point B and carry the tools needed.
What's your collection system camera?
The sewer.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Camera that goes into the sewer mains.
Camera and a pipe or something?
It's a
Sort of.
cable. Camera and cable. We don't have a wireless capability yet. I'm sure it's out there, but not for $15,000.
So these will be funded if there are funds for them, and if they're not, they just get moved. Right. 3 different colors, but that's the type of engine that we've ordered that should be here by Christmas time. Be in before the end of the year.
We'll have it for 20 years, right?
That's the plan. Or longer.
Okay, thank you.
That's my report.
Are there any questions for Brett? Right, it's just an informational item until next meeting. All right.
And so if those CIP projects, if those CIP schedules look okay to council, then we'll continue with those in the final budget document for you.
All right.
Thank you, council.
All right, for our next item, minute order, energy audit, professional services contract award. Mike Camarena.
Thank you, Mayor Kimball and Council. City Council approved the release of the request for proposal process for development and implementation of an energy efficiency program projects on April 24th, 2018. 3 companies contacted city staff for this RFP document. 3 companies listed in the council packet, Lumac from San Francisco, Veneer from Los Angeles, and Climatech from Anaheim. The RFP process closed May 24th with 1 proposal submitted, and it was submitted by Climatech. So the other companies decided their workload, their existing workload didn't allow them to submit to this RFP process. So Climatech proposal was reviewed and met all criteria established in the RFP document, and also provided Lindsay Unified School District as a reference. So staff reviewed the Climatech relationship with LUSD staff and received positive comments. So the recommendation tonight is to award the energy audit to Climatech LLC. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mike?
Makes it hard to pick.
Yeah, makes it real hard to pick.
Move for approval.
Move for approval by
Second.
Selena, seconded by Cortez. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is an informational item presented by Bill Ziegler, cannabis update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Honorable Council. When you're ready, Maria. So we want to talk a little bit tonight about cannabis. Next slide, please. This is an ongoing conversation. When we've met previously, the direction that staff received from council was that you were interested in us creating an opportunity for commercial cannabis business, which would involve the growing, packaging, and shipping out of the area of cannabis. You indicated that you were not interested in having retail sales here, and there was discussion about possibly doing labs here. So I've taken some of the successful ordinances and resolutions from other local communities and tailored them to Lindsay's zoning code and Lindsay's geography. Next slide, please. State requirements would still be in place, and the biggest state requirement is you cannot have this stuff within 600-foot radius of the school. That's the biggest takeaway here. Next slide, please. And so there's your Lindsay zoning map, and we're familiar with that. You've got the boundaries on it. And next slide, please. And so I'd go from that. So your heavy industrial zoning district would include 2 areas, the parcel that we know as Tulare Frozen Foods to the north, and a small bit of vacant land just east of the railroad and north of Lindmore to the south. pretty near Ben Bryan's door place. And so staff is proposing that you would allow commercial cannabis businesses there. And that would be any commercial business activity relating to cannabis, including but not limited to cultivating, transporting, distributing, manufacturing, compounding, converting, processing, preparing, storing, packaging, delivering, and selling wholesale sales only, not retail, of cannabis in any ancillary products and accessories in the city, whether or not carried out for gain or profit. Seem reasonable? We have a definition in the ordinance that stipulates that. I pulled it out of the ordinance that says this is what commercial cannabis businesses is. A nursery could be included in that. The ordinances that I sent you provided a long list of definitions. Okay, next slide, please. We hadn't talked about this zoning district, but I threw this in there talking about labs. Now, we talked, when the next slide that we go to, we'll talk about professional office. I don't want to go there yet, Maria. It'll be the professional office district, which is what we had discussed for labs. But I wanted to throw this out to see if you had an interest in it or not. So if you had testing laboratories, and it defines, it means a facility, entity, or site in the state that offers or performs testing of cannabis or cannabis products. And that is both of the following: accredited by an accrediting body that is independent from all other persons involved in the cannabis industry in the state and registered with the California State Department of Public Health. Now, if you choose to go with this, you recognize we are in proximity to Lincoln School. We are in proximity to Washington School. So some of the parcels in there would disqualify because of that. And if council decides to move forward with this, anybody who wants to open a lab or any of the cannabis-related operations will go through the conditional use permit process. That gives you as much control as you can have over any process. So you have maximum control. You review them one by one, and there are consequences if they're not good actors. And you have the ability to revoke and to do a variety of things. So what do you think about the light industrial zoning district for testing labs?
I like it.
I don't like it.
I'm okay with it. Like you said, I think one of the benefits to that is that we have control over it, so they would come to us, right, and then we would kind of put our conditions to if we needed to. I like that aspect of it.
I see it being another aspect of I mean, the orange industry has their labs, and I mean, just to get the product to be what it needed to be, you know.
Pam, do you want to talk about what your concern is with it?
What kind of laboratory work? Making different kinds of cannabis or stronger stuff or whatever, morally, I'm uncomfortable with it.
Well, it's a little bit different than that, I would say. The testing that's required is they're not going to be research and development. It is a testing facility, so when it goes through the chain of custody from like a grower or a cultivator that says, this is a particular oil, it has so much, a percentage of oil in it or a particular product, the testing lab will verify by the claim. Or if there's a particular
it's quality control.
Yeah, it's in it. That's probably the best way to say that is it's quality. It's a third-party quality control. It's not research and development to come up with potency or certain effects. That's not what its purpose is. Its purpose is basically third-party quality control before it actually gets to the retail channel. That's what that's for. And typically the testing facilities are I would say that they're the higher paying jobs that you'd be looking for. And so a lot of places are trying to get testing as kind of like almost like an anchor, where you have, I don't want to say it's like a horse before the cart kind of situation, but it's like in other industries where it's available, then you have the industry come in. And because if you have multiple sites, if you have one testing facility that's available to test, because they are quality control and they're a third party, you will see different companies come in to use that testing, because you got to remember that everything has to be tested. And so if there's a testing facility in Lindsay, they don't have to ship the product that's in Lindsay to San Jose to get tested. And there's cost benefits to that, even though they're shipping it out eventually. And so some cities, that's kind of the tack that they've taken is, well, we want these jobs in this industry that are higher paying, that require, they don't necessarily require, but oftentimes you'll see, people with advanced degrees that are running these labs, because that's where they are, and then the cultivators and the manufacturers, they kind of surround that because it's a easy to use like ancillary service.
Supply and demand kind of thing. Kind of like a supply and demand.
Yeah.
We need it.
I mean, you just have to keep in mind. I mean, if you're, what are you going to actually allow in the city? And testing is one of those things that all the product has to get tested. And so if they're not going to test it in Lindsay, they're going to get it tested somewhere. It's whether it's sold here or not, it's going to have to be tested.
So if you have it near the source, it seems like that would be a nice relationship and keep the dollars here. Is there a reason, Mario, why testing couldn't also occur in the heavy industrial district that you're aware of?
No.
Okay, so perhaps with council's permission, I'll add testing labs to the heavy industrial district as well. It's the enumerated list of things that you're allowed to do there. Further discussion on light industrial? No. Next slide, please. And then professional offices. You've only got two areas really. The northern area, as you look at it, it's substantially developed. You've got the wellness center, the pool complex. You have a housing area at Alameda Circle, and then you've got a group of medical offices that are between the tracks and Sequoia. You've got a little bit of vacant land in there, but not much. You have the county office to the north of the wellness center, and then there's a medical facility at the far north of that. I don't see much activity taking place there, although something could happen if you got a vacant space, depending on who's doing what. On the south end, I think that's probably 100% developed. It was one of the reasons that I pulled out the light industrial zone, is I don't think there's much opportunity to grow here without displacing existing dentists, chiropractors, that sort of thing. So I guess it begs the question, do you even want to include testing labs in this district?
I said yes also. Just a professional area. I mean, that's going to be a professional job or a professional business. So.
I agree with that. But, if everything is being used and someone is interested, they'll probably seek out the other places.
I think there'll be opportunities as we look at the health of our orange industry, our packing house industry. There may be opportunities to get created there that don't exist today, where instead of having an empty building, you might be able to do something else with it.
I don't like the possibility of pushing out, medical offices or whatever, because testing labs are going to pay higher rent or something. I don't know that benefits the community. Well, but they'll have plenty of other places they could go.
But that's not our decision. I mean, if they want to buy somebody out, they buy somebody out.
And I don't know if that will necessarily will be pushing them out. There isn't anything
buy them out
available.
if they want to. I mean, you could have voted no to even go any further on this. So I mean, everything's going to be a no. So I mean.
Okay.
I've not been. There's no perfect way to do this. I mean, we're going to be. I promise you, we'll be back before you saying, hey, you know what, we didn't realize this, or this is causing an issue, or something. I mean, it's just every city is unique, and this is an even really unique issue on top of that. So I mean, that's the thing just to keep in mind that everything's changing, and then to top it off, I mean, you guys know, I mean, the state's in control of a lot of this stuff, and they've been hammering out rules for 2 years, and they still can't get them straight the way they want them, and so we may be coming back to you for something that doesn't even exist right now.
Well, one of the things that we have to keep in mind right now too is also opportunities, because right now we don't have them. We need to open doors to other things.
almost be nice to bring the labs in and then them follow them.
So I sent off to council a draft land use ordinance. I'll make the change to include testing lab in heavy industrial. And Mario believes that we can actually wait on that a little while if we need to, if we want to refine that a bit more, and certainly staff is okay with that. We have a current deadline, and I don't know how rigid it is, but we need to have the 120-day window for getting something in front of the voters is July the 9th. So my desire would be to bring the taxing ordinance back to council at the next council meeting, along with the resolution authorizing us to go to vote on this. One of the questions that we have, though, and Mario and I have discussed it a little bit, is what to charge. Woodlake started off with $25 per square foot. They have since reduced it significantly from that value. What the ordinance would do if you set that threshold is that's the maximum that it can be. And it does have conditions in there over the course of time. You're allowed to go CPI, Consumer Price Index increases. If desired, council can at any time reduce the amount. So the recommendation would be that you go, unless Mario has opposition to it, you go with the resolution the ordinance, I should say, and resolution as written. And if it appears we're going to get this approved through the voters, then you can, and we're going to learn more between now and then, and we can set the cost per square foot at whatever's appropriate. You indicated you thought Woodlake was about the $4 per square foot.
They're at 6.
They're at 6. So significantly different than 25. Again, that's the thing about being the first one out of the gate is you have this idea that you're going to make all this money, and that's you got to find that reality. And so that's where they've adjusted theirs to. And we may do some further refinement as it gets closer.
So you're proposing 25 per square foot?
I'm proposing, well,
So it
We can't go over the 25.
yeah, so it does depend, and you're probably going to tax the different industries
Differently.
Again, there's no one way to do this, right? Normally what they do is cultivation is the big thing, because that's where you can have a huge warehouse, and that's where a lot of people starting out, people getting into the industry, that's what they want, is a big cultivation space. And so when we talk about square footage and a tax on a square foot, I mean that's kind of like the elephant, no, not the elephant room, but the 1,000-pound gorilla. That's like the big thing. And then the cities usually have a gross receipts tax on some of the other industries, like the testing, or you could do it, per test, or there's a million ways to do it. The big one is cultivation, and so when we're talking about square footage, usually it's just a flat fee as far as how much are you going to cultivate, and you charge per square foot. So it's helpful in the respect that you don't have to, because that's the majority of your revenue base that you're going to be getting back. It's easy to verify, because really you just got to go in there and measure, and when they apply to the city for their license, they're going to tell you how much it is, and if we want to go verify it, then we just go verify it. When you get into a situation when you're doing cultivation on gross receipts, it just becomes a lot more difficult. Now we have to have Brett look at their books and really go through them and have him be confident that they're not cheating in some way, which, I don't know if he has either the time or the desire to do those things, with all the other stuff going on. It gets more complicated when you're doing something like that. And so on the cultivation side, yeah, we would say up to $25 a square foot, but the council would set that amount by resolution. And so we have $25 a square foot would be a max. I don't really see you guys ever getting there because of the way it's kind of shaken out. Yeah, the market's just not supporting it. But it gives some stability. It gives cultivators, they are not having to base their business model now on some like prospective tax. It makes it a little bit easier for them to say, okay, we have 5,000 square feet. We know how much our tax to the city is going to be before they even start. And so it's a little bit easier for them to actually plan out and have a business plan to see if it's going to pencil out. But on the other industries, usually it's a gross receipts, you know, I mean, it can go anywhere from 1% to 10%, just depending on what you want. But the big, I would say the biggest concern is really cultivation. How much are you going to charge per square foot?
So I would say something like up to, I mean, voters need to not get too big stars in their eyes about, you know, how much might be collected. So it needs to be clear that it could be a lot less.
It could be zero. I mean, if nobody's here, you know, if nobody wants to come to Lindsay, I mean, it could be nothing. And that's, you know, that's a reality. I mean, every day there's, you know, another city saying, hey, it's okay, you know, to come to our city. So there could be nobody coming here. So they need to realize it's, I mean, personally, I wouldn't even put a figure on it. I mean, it's entirely based on.
Oh, you don't have to put a figure on it?
No.
But we just, by ordinance later, put a figure on it. I mean,
Well, no, you would.
What do you mean?
Like, we wouldn't estimate how much we're going to get, because we have really
no idea. Yeah.
But we can say, okay, it's up to $25 a square foot. If it passes, then you would pass a resolution that says, okay, we're setting it. We can go up to 25. We can't exceed the 25, but we're setting it at $5 a square foot, so everybody knows. And then if you need to review it, you know, more than likely we would review it before the fiscal year begins as we're going through the budget, and we could make a recommendation and say, hey, it's, you know, everything's filled up and all our heavy industrial sites or whatever it is, we think you should either expand the areas or increase the tax and do it that way.
Seem reasonable? So my intent will be to bring back the tax ordinance and resolution next council meeting. Please come by and see me if you have questions, concerns, you want to discuss it further. And Maria and I will continue our dialogue to make sure that we've got everything dialed in on it. Any questions for me tonight?
No, I think it's just going to be trying to, for the residents of the town to know that they're not actually getting taxed. And I think that's going to be to get it out there, to say, hey, you personally aren't getting taxed, it's the industry that's coming in. And I think we had already talked about all that I'm sure we'll be letting it be known.
Yeah, there's always been.
So I mean, they're going to be happy if they say if it's a big tax.
Yeah, I mean, once people find out that they don't have to pay it, I mean, really the end consumer is the one that's going to end up paying it. But you know, just your average resident who's not buying it here, they're not going to see any change in their financial situation at all.
Just all-night donut shops and things like that. Cookie shops.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Bill and I were talking about before the meeting is, I can't remember where I read the article. I think Bill said he saw it in the Valley Voice, but you know that they did a traffic study at the dispensary that opened in Woodlake, and it was, I remember it being like 90% of the people going there were not from Woodlake. And when you process that, I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but when I look at Woodlake, Woodlake doesn't have a McDonald's, Woodlake doesn't have a Taco Bell, Woodlake doesn't have a Starbucks, and these are all like ancillary businesses that if people are driving to Lindsay, they're going to hit them. I mean, you basically have to pass by those things to come into town, you know, and it's kind of we hope, you know, that if it's driving more traffic to town with our sales tax, I mean, that, you know, even better for the city.
And that only works if you're having the retail here, and we're not. I'm saying that as humor because I read that the ancillary businesses were doing really well in Woodlake with the wholesale business. That won't be a factor unless you get a hungry truck driver. So, thank you, Council.
Okay, thank you, Bill, Mario. Our final item before executive session is a request for future agenda items. Do you have any?
I don't have any. I just have, I think, more of a question. I asked this. You know, last year there was only one meeting in July, one of our council meetings. Were we planning on doing the same this year? Just curious.
Everybody takes their vacation at the same time.
That's not good. 4th of July and.
What's it fall on?
Well, 4th of July is.
4th of July comes on Wednesday.
It would be a Wednesday.
A Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
But then, So that Tuesday's the 10th, right?
10th and 24th.
It's 10th and 24th.
10th and
right?
24th.
So I guess
I
I'm
think I'm gonna
requesting
be
if we're
here.
gonna have a meeting in July, if we can meet on the 24th as opposed to the 10th. That's what I'm requesting.
Our big challenge will be, really
Depends on
our
what's
staff
going on.
meeting will be the next one in June. That's when you have to approve your budget, right? So we do the budget in June. I bring back the public hearing items for cannabis in June. Mike, you have big things
Landscape
coming?
assessment districts,
Landscape assessment districts.
that requires 2 meetings.
Can it happen the 26th, 24th of July, Mike?
If we do 26 and 24, that would work.
That'll work? If council desires it, then we can do it.
Well, I mean, at that
What
point,
are you
can we just see what's happening? I mean, because if there's 3 here,
Right, let's
That are-
just
that
look
are
at the
able
next
to.
meeting and see
Okay.
if,
That's fine.
You know,
I'll
how
just
many-
go ahead and bring that
Plan.
up.
Okay, so we'll visit at the next council meeting and see
Yeah.
what the availability is
Okay.
going to be. Great.
okay. With that, we will go into executive session. Thank everyone for being here tonight. On our executive session, we have conference with real property negotiators, general code, section 54956.8. Negotiation, agency negotiator, Bill Ziegler, city manager, negotiating party, city of Lindsay, under negotiation price and terms. Second item, conference with legal counsel regarding general code section 54954.5F, conference with labor negotiators. And item 3, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, general code section 54954.5C, initiation of litigation pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D of section 54956.9, one case.